So I'll just start by introducing myself. So I've been supporting, my name is Catherine. I've been supporting Agile Denver monthly meeting for about a year now. And if you are curious to why Sherry and I are here, Jessica and Sandy have officially stepped down from organizing, and we've done our official handoff. So I've asked Sherry to join me as my co-organizer, so you'll start seeing the two of us representing Agile Denver monthly meeting.
Great. Yes, and hi, I'm Sherry, and I have found that meetups have been extremely valuable for my Agile journey. I have learned an incredible amount from this community, and you may have seen me at an Agile meetup or two, and I am thrilled to be Catherine's partner in crime here. Think of us tonight as your flight attendants for your journey this evening. Please do not move about the cabin. We are recording this session, so adjust your settings for your privacy preferences.
Introduce our speaker for this evening, Tosi, who's going to talk to us tonight about organizational evolution through learning.
All right. So thanks everybody for having me. Excited to be here. I keep on looking out the window a minute ago. There's some storms coming in Chicago, so if it gets a little noisy, I promise it's the storms.
Music.
Let me. And if we go, can everybody see the slides okay?
Yes.
All right. So we'll hop right into here. There's a link there for you for the slides. Catherine and Sherry also have access to the slides. There's some contact information for you, all that fun stuff. So let's start with this. A non-rhetorical question, so feel free to hop in the chat here. Does anybody, or even just kind of spit it out, does anybody know this wonderful gentleman?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, all right. All right, so this is my treat for you all. Even if I am horrible tonight, I want you to feel free to look up this gentleman. This was a dear friend of mine, David Hussman. He passed, about 2 years ago now. I owe a lot of the things that I've learned and done and achieved for David. He was a brilliant speaker, a brilliant thinker, a kind man. So again, even if I do horrible for you, I feel like if I made some people aware of David's work, I've done okay then. So there you go. I can't do any better than that. But yeah, feel free, David Hussman, look at his work in the Agile space, the XP space, product thinking, good stuff there. All right, back into some of the more of the topical stuff here. So this is me when I'm standing in front of a podium. I'm not that interesting, but I'll give you a little bit of information so you have some context. Spent the majority of my career, like the early 2000s, as an engineer, low latency, high throughput trading, blah, 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 all that kind of fun stuff. It was probably about 2005, 2006. I was an architect at the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago, and as part of being an architect, one of the things I was supposed to solve was why were we duplicating data so much? We were a big company, enterprise company, you know how this goes. We were duplicating data everywhere. And so I was supposed to come up with this master data model, blah, blah, blah. And so it just so happened that while I was working on that, I went to a No Fluff, Just Stuff conference in Chicago, and I actually met David. And I started hearing about all this XP and Agile stuff. And I was like, man, that makes a lot more sense than trying to solve this data model. It sounds like the problem is we're just not really talking to teams, and so everybody's duplicating work over and over. And so I started getting into the whole Agile stuff back then. So I did that for a few years. I went to Red Hat. I was an architect at Red Hat for a few years. When I left Red Hat, Red Hat's got beautiful technology, but not good products. And this was one of those things that I remember talking with David a bunch about. He would always talk about products and outcomes and people, and similar with Jeff Patton and those kinds of things. And I remember just when I would hang out with those guys, like, man, this makes a lot of sense. And so I left Red Hat because I got I got tired of technology. I wanted to get more into problems and products and those situations. Was coaching kind of at the time, started coaching back then. But where it got interesting was, so I would do a lot of coaching and I would do a lot of teaching. I would teach test-driven, I would teach XP, I would teach Agile practices and product thinking and various things. And I like to think I was okay at it. But of course, what would always happen would be you'd teach somebody and everybody would get it. They'd get it in your 2-day course because it was easy. It was safe, right? The things were made up, and the tests were easy. There wasn't legacy code. The products were obvious. Everybody was excited. There wasn't the history of bad decisions weighing down the product, and so the courses were easy. And then people would go back to work, and they'd be like, and it wouldn't stick. It wouldn't kind of make it for them. And even with the coaching we would do back then, it was, we'll show up Monday and Tuesday of your sprint, and then, you do the rest of your sprint, and we come back 2 weeks later, and it didn't really feel good, and didn't have a lot of, it had some success, right, but it didn't have the sticky kind of impact you'd want it to have. So fast forward, rewind, however you want to look at it, about 7 years ago now, we were doing some work up at Target in Minneapolis. And Target, if you all don't remember back then, this is, again, 6 or 7 years ago, Target was having outages all the time. Even when I was up there, they were confident that Amazon was going to buy them because they were losing money, they were losing financially, they were losing technically. They were assuming Amazon would buy them. And then they got all amped up about this DevOps stuff, and they wanted to create this thing where people would come learn DevOps. And so I was there and helping them out, and we helped them kind of rethink about how they did some of this stuff. But what they did that I thought was really cool is they created this thing they called it a Dojo, and it was this place where teams came to learn things, and so that's what I've really been doing the past 6 or 7 years now is evolving this idea around. How do we make it so learning becomes, it doesn't become a special event, it becomes the way we do things, and then all these nice benefits you get when you embrace learning, and you embrace this idea that there's more to figure out, and we don't know the answers, and all this nice communication and creativity that flourishes from that. That was a lot about me. The summary was just kind of that arc. I kind of got bored in the technical space, kind of got into the coaching, but wanted to be more impactful, wanted to get deeper into products. And then this idea of really getting into learning has been impactful for a lot of organizations and a lot of people. So that's kind of what we're gonna jam on while we're here today. This is a wonderful quote. I love this. If I know the audience, you're all well versed in Deming, so maybe this doesn't seem that new to you all here, but this idea that any organization or any leadership group is going to quickly get quote unquote transformation just because they want it, and they don't want to actually take the time to commit to it. It doesn't work. If you expect that you can just buy the transformation, man, I have not seen that work ever. And so if we really want to do things, if we really want to be different and we want to be better, I think we need to listen to Dr. Deming here, who said it well, 40, 50 years ago, that we need this commitment to new learning and new philosophy. And so that needs to be kind of in our DNA. We can't expect to just be Netflix and be Spotify. We have to commit to these things. So if you get this idea that we need to learn. We need to invest in learning and make it part of our organizational DNA. I'm going to tell you that, at least in my experience, there's things and there's some nuances inside here, but there's some core things that have to happen for a team or an organization to learn. So the first is this idea of repetition. I'm combining with an experimentation. And to give you a little bit of idea here, this one is where it gets a little nuanced. Repetition is obvious. If you want to learn something, you can't just do it once and say you're done, right? We can't just say, look, I added 2 numbers and now I've mastered mathematics. There's a lot more you have to kind of get through there, and you have to do things in different ways, but repeat the practices over and over. And tied with that, you need to be able to experiment and try new things and try and see how, when you experiment things, how the outcomes change. What I think's implicit inside there, and it was interesting to hear somebody mention this around psychological safety, to be able to experiment, you have to have safety inside your organization. We'll talk about how that plays out here in a little bit, but that's a fundamental thing that we find lacking in a lot of organizations. They say they want innovation, they want creativity, they want experiments. Just don't ever be wrong. You can experiment all you want, but make sure you don't miss the deadline, and make sure you don't, make sure you don't miss your story points. It's just a silly thing, and so we need this idea of safety to be able to do experiment and repetition. For learning to happen in a
Did Joel just freeze for me, or is he frozen for everybody?
Yep.
Might be that storm.
Uh-oh.
It could be.
Anybody have a joke?
Do you want to hear a really dirty joke?
This is being recorded, Katie.
This isn't my meetup.
Apparently, there's going to be editing happening, so.
3 white horses fell in a mud puddle.
Oh, brother.
Oh, great. That's a clean, dirty joke.
That's funny. Huh.
Sorry, it's the only joke I've got.
It was a good one.
Yes.
And I think Marie's probably heard it because I used it once at the Agile Denver North.
But I still thought it was cute anyhow.
And you're back.
He's back.
All right.
You're still on mute though, Joel.
I think he has to call in.
Yeah, he was having a bit of audio issues to start with, so.
I really want to know what the cowboy is whispering in your ear, Pear.
Do you not know who that cowboy is?
It's from, I don't know his name. From
Sam.
His name is Sam.
Sam, God, what's his last name?
I know, I'm forgetting it too, but he's famous for that mustache.
Elliot, Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott,
Sam
yes.
Elliott.
What would he be saying, though?
Telling me the Doritos secret.
He's talking about those 3 horses.
Yeah.
You're still muted, Joel. All right. Can we hear you now? Did you freeze again?
Ooh.
Is an anomaly. And so again, if we want this idea to have a culture of learning, it needs to be something that is expected, it happens continuously, it's in the language of the way we work. And then lastly here, not lastly, sorry. Does anybody know what this gentleman is up to? You check the slides to make sure you guys can all still hear me. All right. Any guess from the audience on what this gentleman is doing? I forgot, you were all muted. So I'll assume you all have wonderful answers and none of them are right.
I'm not sure. I have no idea.
He's selling beverages and maybe tacos.
Yeah, he's transferring knowledge, right? This is a horrible joke now because it's so broken on my side. it's funny to me because in many organizations they talk about knowledge transfers. All they do is knowledge transfers. And so the idea is this gentleman has knowledge. He can just pour it into water bottles or pour it into tacos and he can hand it to you. And then you have it. You have the knowledge. But the reality is knowledge transfers don't work. For anything that is even mildly complex, knowledge transfers simply don't work because the thought process to get there can't be transferred. You didn't have the experience, so this idea of a knowledge transfer just simply doesn't work. And lastly, this, I keep on saying lastly for you, this picture here, for those that don't know, this is my arm. I have some tattoos, which is a whole other set of stories. But what's interesting about this, I was talking to my tattoo artist a few years back and asked him, so how did you get into tattoos? And he said, you know, I go, you weren't just like a good drawer in high school and college, and you said, I'm going to make this permanent on people. And he said, no, that would be irresponsible. I go, oh, good, thank you. He said he actually had to go through a lot of training. He had to practice a lot. He had to practice on various types of fruit, and then of various types of skins, and he actually had to do a lot before he was able to do things. And I compare that to how we do things organizationally, where it's like, I know you've never done anything in the cloud, but just go figure out how to spin stuff up in AWS, or you know, I know you don't know how to do this, but it's documented in Confluence or Jira, so just go read what somebody else experienced. It doesn't work. And the summary for that story for you is really, if you go to a tattoo artist and they tell you they learned to do tattoos through reading Confluence, don't get a tattoo there. You really should go somewhere else. We need to have our own experiences. We can't transfer knowledge. We can't have somebody else's experience. We need to have these things for ourselves. And look, I'm a consultant, and I'll tell you this too. Consultants can't give you their experiences. You need to get your own experiences. You need to learn in the context of your work and in your organization and make things better. We can't copy companies. We can't copy Spotify. We can't copy Netflix. We can't do maturity models. Every place I've gone that does a maturity model, and this isn't me ripping on anybody, but it might sound a little harsh. Most places where maturity models exist, it's executives that want to know and compare their teams. Tell me why they're not good. Rank them on their skills and tell them what they're doing. The funny thing with all these maturity models is if you just talk to the team, they know what they want to do. They're just not given the opportunity to do these things. And so we can't just get Spotify's culture and Netflix's engineering. We can't get maturity models that just will magically tell us a path forward. It just doesn't work. People know what they need. So all my ranting for this, look, I firmly believe there's no such thing as a transformation. A transformation tells you that there is an end game, right? Like we all grew up in the 80s, I believe, and maybe some in the 90s. Everybody knows the Transformers, right? I mean, at one point they're a truck, next point they're a robot. There was no kind of continuation there. And so this idea that organizations are going to transform and then be done is just kind of silly. And I don't even like using the word. I'd rather say we're continuously evolving because that's what we want to do. We don't want to just say we're done. The way to continuously evolve is embracing learning. So let's kind of talk about how we can do this. We talked about the repetition. Let's get into some examples here. The other thing that I want to stress here, it's critical for an organization that wants to be a learning organization to recognize and use double loop learning. So don't fix the symptom, find out the cause and address these things, right? We need double loop learning inside of our organization if we want to truly embrace learning as a continuous thing. So I'm going to talk to you about how this idea of the dojo does it. Obviously, I do a lot of dojos and that kind of stuff. I'm also a horrible salesperson. But what I want you to get out of this is really, even if you don't kind of like the idea of the model or those kinds of things, at least think about how we're doing things and see how it could help you out inside your organization. So let me tell you about this dojo stuff. I guess the first question here for you all, and I'll take a pause if there's any questions in chat. Does anybody have a dojo? Does anybody know about them? Or are there any other questions before I kind of dive into it?
I know what a dojo is, yeah.
That was Sherry. So Sherry, tell us about it. What do you know? Besides, you can't read my slide. That'd be cheating.
I don't know what I could say about a dojo other than I took karate classes and made it up to blue belt, and it is all about it's a learning space, and you work up it's repetition, and you're doing something over and over again until you can perfect it, and you learn your different styles. And yeah, I don't know what more I could say about it.
Daniel or Kim, do you want to add as well?
This is Daniel. I've gotten to hear about them from other people who put them on. So I'm excited for what comes next, but just that, I guess in the modern XP, Agile, DevOps, whatever label we want to use this week, sense that as opposed to here's a 2-day class, now have fun applying it, it's often a multi-week, let's say maybe, let's say a 12-week program where a team is doing it with supervision, with help, with mentorship, on real work in a slightly more controlled environment, so that they can ingrain the practices in repetition over that period of time in a way that they can take it. It becomes integrated into how they work day to day.
Nice.
Yeah, both were wonderful answers, replies there. So yeah, so you all can kind of read it here. So like the things I want to make sure I call out for you here. Oh, geez, let me do that for the idea of a dojo. It's learning first. It's meant to be an immersive learning experience. It is not individual learning. It is full team learning. They're learning new practices and approaches, new ways of thinking. But they're learning them while they deliver their products within the constraints of their organization. All right, so you have a team, they come in, they hang out with us. They're usually there we can go over different timelines, but they're usually there for 6 weeks. But again, it's a full team. It's not just engineers. We have designers, product owners, scrum masters, engineers, operations. We help them formulate a team, and we'll talk about why that's really important here shortly. But it's this whole team coming together, learning over delivery, working together, learning in the moment while they're doing their work. There is repetition of things that are happening. We also like to think about the dojo prior to a few months ago. It was a way of learning and practicing, but in most organizations, it was also a physical space. The reason why the physical space was important, and there's some pictures in a second here about them. This is just kind of as an aside. The physical space was super important because what we started doing with the physical space, the teams would come there to learn, and a couple things happened. One is you took the team out of their normal workspace, and there's this mental thing that happens when you're in a different space where you start to open up your mind more naturally to learning and new ideas. And so we take them out of space, they'd open up to new ideas, but we'd also get density of teams. And so by density of teams, you could overhear other teams. It created two things. One, it created this energy that you could kind of feel in the room. You could feel things happening. You could feel people talking, and that was really nice. But also what happened, since you could hear other teams, your teams would have to, your personal team would have to lean in more and really talk and really get engaged with each other. But also they would overhear other teams, and then they would start helping each other, because we'd also have teams kind of overlapped in their experience. Some team would be starting today, and another team would be in their third week. And all these beautiful things happen because in an organization that you build different products, but you have a lot of overlap in the skills. And so you started creating this environment where this team that was 3 weeks in would say, oh, I see that problem you're going to have. We worked through it. Let me sit down with you. And all of a sudden you have teams teaching teams, and just beautiful things happen. And so this physical space was very important. There's the intention of the design. There's lots of things behind it. I'll talk a little bit about how we do it remotely. But the dojo was a way of learning. and also a very physical place to be. Here's a couple of quick examples just so you can get an idea. The picture on the left, this is what I want you to take out of this is that's actually two different teams. One team is sitting down on the left side, and the team in the middle wasn't in yet. But you could see, like in this example, there's actually three teams. You couldn't see the third team in that space. That room wasn't very big, and they have three teams in there. You have enough privacy, but you also have enough to overhear each other. On the picture on the right, you can kind of see this is upper right. There was another kind of team space. The things to see there is standard kind of stuff, lots of visual indicators. Every team has a TV because we stress learning. We stress group learning first. The thing that's interesting about the dojo is we don't talk about the flow of work. We slow down the flow of work to make sure that the flow of information and the flow of learning is smooth and as we focus on the rate of the team's absorption of information. And so early on, teams strictly mob. And so you'll see like a lot of these, in the left you can kind of see the TV there in the corner, in the right you can see the TV over there on the far right. The teams sit around a table and they're learning together. And again, it's about the flow of learning and the flow of information. That's really hard for some groups groups meaning usually management, to kind of lynch onto there, is that this is the thing we're looking for. In the bottom right corner, that's another example of a dojo, because when it's a physical space, it becomes the place where people go to learn things. And so all these things start popping up where somebody says, we're going to do a brown bag lunch on this, and then people know things are always happening in the dojo. If I'm not busy today, I'm going to go to the dojo and see what's happening. And that's just an example down there. This gentleman was doing, I believe, a presentation on API gateways. And so all of these people came out to kind of learn and try things together. But again, it's just a nice place where it becomes like this is where the learning happens, or this is where it starts. And then you take it back to your organization or your teams. This is what it looks like when you're remote. And this is a bad scaled picture. We've still been doing these dojos remote, focusing on helping teams learn, focusing on team flow of information, team flow of learning. I can tell you that when we first started doing remote stuff, I was really concerned about how well teams would be able to learn together, because we do a lot of single piece flow stuff, single piece learning, kind of repetition. The teams that I've had have been wonderful with it. The thing that we have not been able to reproduce yet, though, is the energy and the sharing, the kind of spontaneity, right, of happening and cross teams hearing and teaching each other inside the dojo. Virtually, it doesn't happen because you can't listen in to multiple Zoom meetings. So we're struggling with that aspect of it. But the team level is working out pretty well. You can even see up in the upper right, we had Woody hang out with us for a while, and so that was a lot of fun. But you can do this stuff remotely. But again, the dojos are about learning first. Physical space can be done remotely. The interesting thing about the dojo, we talked early on about you need kind of context for stuff to be sticky for you. Everything done inside the dojo is in context of the product that you're building. And to be very clear about this, there is no curriculum and there is no plan. And I'll show you a little bit of how we help the team create the learning path and their learning journey. But before a team starts working with us, before they come in and we start talking, there is no plan. And that kind of freaks a lot of people out. I've had many organizations say, well, what are they going to learn on day 2 of week 3? And I got to say, I don't know, because I don't know. Because we start off with a plan, but Woody says this wonderfully. You figure out the work to do by doing the work. You figure out what you need to learn by learning some things, and you don't know what you don't know. And so what's happening inside the dojo is teams are building things, but we're learning the things that we don't know as we go. We talk about creating learning moments as we go. That thing we just did felt kind of weird. Should we try it again a different way? this doesn't feel right at all. Hey, does somebody have an idea on something we should try? The learning kind of happens in the moment. We have ideas of the things we want to talk about, but a lot of the learning happens dynamically and in the moment. And this is how we talk about being a mirror for the teams. This is the pattern we're trying to get the teams to get into when they're with us, is that they start recognizing learning opportunities as they go. And so that's why we can never create a curriculum, because if we create a curriculum, then they always want a curriculum. But if we teach them how to recognize learning moments while they're doing things, it's really impactful. This thing is really interesting. When we bring in full teams, and if you think about this value stream, or call it a product value stream, so we bring in teams with people that will span the whole value stream. In a lot of, if you were to contrast this with many workshops would go to optimize a bucket of this. Today, you're going to learn how to do discovery sprint or design sprints, or you're going to learn how to do story mapping, or you're going to learn how to do your Scrum practices, or you're going to learn how to do test-driven development, or you're going to learn how to do infrastructure automation. We bring in the whole team, and so they learn that they have the same kind of context and the same kind of language, but they also realize that you can't just optimize one aspect of these and leave the other ones wrong. It's a simple theory of constraints here. So we need to understand where the biggest constraint is in the flow of value and the flow of learning. Another reason why we do this is that skills are super complementary, right? And so at many places I go, everybody talks about testing. Oh man, it would be great if we did more test automation. Yeah, test-driven is a great thing. We just never have time for it. When you work with teams and they understand the context of their product, and they can start making decisions based upon, and they can start doing the thin slicing based upon product outcomes, and they can do a little bit of design, and then they get to this point where the thing they're doing has a simple outcome. Thinking of the test becomes easier, and the test becomes smaller, and all of these skills just naturally complement each other, right? So if we do product discovery, I don't want to say it well, but if we have good context of the things we are building, we can have a better design, and we can make smaller intentional decisions, and we can talk about how to build it in a test-driven way, and we can even use it so that the infrastructure that we build learns things about how the product's being used, and it feeds back into the discovery side of things. And then all of a sudden, you actually have a team that is not just writing code, and somebody that's doing monitoring, and somebody that's doing design. You have a team that is learning about how all of their skills help each other, and how it helps the product. And so this is why we want full teams working together on a full product, learning how the various aspects and the practices affect various parts of the value stream. This is what the standard flow looks like, and then we'll take a pause here for any questions here. So in the big square in the center there, that's the team's experience. We'll talk about that, how that looks here in a second. But a team doesn't just show up on Monday and say, we're ready to learn. Before they come in to learn, we go through a chartering session. When I think about a chartering session, it is really about aligning the team around the learning outcomes they're trying to get before they start their experience. Chartering, if you all haven't done it, at least for the context of a dojo, it's a half-day type thing. We go through a few things with the team. We'll talk about, first and foremost, the problem they're trying to solve. We do elevator pitches and all of those situations, but we stress with the team the problem. In a lot of organizations, they don't know the problem. They know the solution, but they don't know the problem. And if all you know is the solution, all you can build is the solution. And so we stress the problem with them. We talk about the learning outcomes they have and the impact that the learning will have on the product. And so we're setting up aligning around outcomes as part of chartering. At the end of the chartering, the team should know the things that they know that they're aware of right then, that they want to get better at, and how it's going to help them in the context of their product. Before chartering, though, teams just can't show up, and you can see that box there. It says consult. It's got multiple there. Usually what happens when a team is going to come into the dojo space, usually a manager says, my team should go into the dojo. That's great. Tell me about your team. But before your team comes into the dojo, we need to talk to the team. And think about the consult as, this team is going to commit to something. Let's make sure they understand expectations, and let's talk through any concerns. It's fine if managers want to talk to us first, but ultimately the team has to own it. It's the team's learning journey. They have to understand what they're signing up for before they go forward. Before the consult is overviews, think about that just as a marketing play to get teams interested and aware of the dojo. So again, make teams aware in the overview, set expectations through consultations, set alignment around outcomes and chartering, and then get into the experience. I'll come back to the experience, I promise, here in 1 second. Teams don't just randomly leave after 6 weeks. There's also, call it an exit interview. We talk about what the team is going to learn next in these exit interviews, what they feel is going to get on their way, and we set them up for success afterwards. If it's follow-up coaching, or if some organizations have enterprise coaches, the team will go to the enterprise coach. Sometimes, in many organizations, when the team leaves the dojo, we actually help them create a new workspace because they found this new way of working much more beneficial. But really what we're trying to do is set the team up for continual learning. What are you going to learn next? How is it going to help? Okay, let's talk about those things. Are you ready? And so that's how the team exits. When the team's inside the dojo, you can see the standard scrum ceremonies going on there. The only delta here was some more deltas, but we do 2.5-day sprints inside the dojo. There's a variety of reasons for that. I can tell you the first and foremost, not even the first and foremost, the two main ones that are going to come up around why we do 2.5-day sprints. The first is that idea of safety. In a lot of organizations, that whole idea of, experiment all you want, just don't be wrong. People get really weird about being wrong over the course of 2 weeks. They feel like it's too big of an investment. And so we've found that just by having teams focus in shorter cycles, that they feel less pressure of being wrong, because they can say, oh yeah, we tried this really good approach. 2 days later, we realized it didn't work, but we learned a lot of things along the way. It just sometimes as simple as that creates this, relieves this pressure on teams. And so the 2.5-day thing's been a nice thing for that aspect. The other things that the 2.5-day does, it creates an intentional focus, right? Because you can't build everything. So it's what's the smallest, simplest thing that's going to help us learn. And so it creates this sense of focus. All the ceremonies that we do have to be very brief, because you can't spend 3 hours planning for 2.5 days. It just doesn't make sense. And so we have to have context. And there's just a lot of simple things that happen really nicely by doing these 2.5-day sprints. They also, of course, get repetition naturally, right? That's one of the key things we're trying to do here is repetition. And so by having 2.5-day sprints with us for 6 weeks, they have 12 cycles where they can go through and they can talk about how they build context along the way. So again, that's the overview of the way teams flow. I'll take a quick pause here for any questions before I dive more into it.
Anyone have any questions?
I don't see anything in the chat other than jokes that were shared.
All right. Then I will continue on. Oh, that doesn't go away. So this is what it. Can I move this? There we go. This is an example for what a team's learning experience could look like over the course of 6 weeks. So in the top, you have a team that's doing new product development. In the bottom, you have a team that's doing cloud migration. The only reason I put this together is realize that teams are learning a lot of things. This is, if you think about, in either of these examples, the breadth of learning would cover multiple courses of any type of situation, right? So like this is depth that teams are getting. It's not just passing by type stuff. This is real kind of context, and when they leave, they have real things that they can use and reference. It's their product, but they've learned a lot of things and how all of these things tie together. So, gave you a little bit around how the teams come in. I mentioned a little bit here on teams helping teams. inside the dojo, there's always at least one coach working with a team, if not two. The coaches are there with the teams full time. It's not just a show up for ceremonies and leave. The coaches are there full time. Teams help each other mostly through passing context. But what happens is by going through these kind of practices and making learning a continuous thing inside the space, learning just becomes a given. You hear teams talking about what they're learning and how they can help each other. The other thing to mention here, the coaches, when we're coaching inside the dojo, you're there 8 hours a day with the team for 6 weeks. But the plan for all the coaches is you're really guiding and teaching heavily early on, but the team has to own their learning over the course of the 6 weeks. And so we talk about early on it's a high touch, the middle 2 weeks is a medium touch, and the end is a low touch. All that really kind of means is how much the coach is creating the learning moments versus helping the team be aware of the learning moments, and then lastly, observing the team to make sure that they're creating their own learning moments. Because again, the goal here is that the team embraces learning and becomes continuation after they leave. This idea of team learning creates a natural double loop learning inside most organizations. So what happens is a team comes in and they want to build something or learn something. By building stuff, they learn things, and then they also learn things that are outside of their control. Things like security policies or architectural decisions or just team structure. And so when the dojo is working with teams, we're also looking for these patterns or outside the team problems. And as we observe outside the team problems, we're working on trying to identify where those problems are sourcing from and looking at how we can learn to resolve those issues, right? So it could be something as simple as, the teams are never set up right. Well, why are teams set up this way? Or a team in the dojo can't finish their product because they're dependent upon too many teams. Well, how did we get this way? Well, we ended up this way because the managers had to have 10 reports and these kinds of things happen, right? And so you start to realize all of these organizational impediments, and by doing 2.5-day sprints, these things blow up super fast in people's face. And so we can apply double loop learning to the organization by using the team as that guinea pig. So it's a nice way of organizations learning on organizations becoming aware of the friction that they've caused, usually unknowingly, and then we can teach and learn how to address those. The other thing that the dojo exposes is when you start embracing learning, all of your bias will be, I shouldn't say all of your bias, but it will expose a bunch of your bias. Many times we've been in organizations where the product is always right. We got to keep on doing the feature a different way. And so we do things, we do a lot of customer interviews. We do, this example here is something from Jeff Patton, his Delta Next approach. We have teams learning about their products to expose their bias if they have an execution bias. If we just build it, we'll be successful. The last organization that we were doing this with that got deep into this, the very first, it was like the second day of the dojo, we did some product discovery, we had some hypotheses, brought an actual, user in, which sounds pretty obvious, but it was kind of revolutionary for this organization. And within 2 minutes, the team's product was blown to shreds. The team thought all they had to do was create this report. This report would tell people, it would tell people the version of the software in the car. I'm being a little fuzzy here, so my apologies, but kind of intentionally. And so they just figured out if they created this report, these people would be happy because they would know the software version in the car. When we talked to the first customer, the first person said, knowing the software version doesn't matter. He goes, it takes me 2 hours to find the car. So he goes, you're not saving me any time. He goes, by the time I find the car, finding out the software takes 30 seconds as it is. I need help so I don't have to go to the car. And so all of a sudden the whole problem changed. And so again, by embracing learning and how might we be wrong and trying ideas and experimenting, we find out these biases. If we have execution bias, this blows up in our face pretty fast as well. So we talked about context. We talked about repetition in the dojo, context in the dojo, how skills overlap, how coaches work, a little bit of the flow. If you're interested in, you could do all those things on your own. You know, you could do 2.5-day sprints. You could help teams think about learning. You could question their outcomes. You could do a lot of those things. But if you want to start your own dojo, here's some ideas for you. First and foremost, understand where you're going to put your focus. This might sound weird, but if you want to do a dojo, if you want to invest in learning inside your organization, you have to think of it as a product. You're creating a scenario for people to learn, and it's a product, and all products don't need to serve everybody at the same time. I've been in too many organizations where they just want a dojo. They just want people to learn, and you have to rein people back and say, what outcomes and what impacts do you want to have, and how will learning help you get there? Because you can't chase everything all the time. It becomes very confusing for the people in the dojo if you say you're working on cloud migration, but also we're going to work on the mainframe, and then we're also going to do this AI ML stuff, and it's, you know, 3 totally different threads. You got to think contextually around the outcomes you want to have and help that drive where you're going to put your focus at. The other reason is, I guarantee you, if you go on the dojo route, if you don't have this outcome view of the world around how learning is going to impact your organization, at least within the first 6 months, somebody's going to say, yeah, the learning's great. Show me it made a difference. And it sounds ridiculous. Show me that learning made a difference. But I guarantee you somebody's going to say, prove to me that learning made a difference, otherwise it's over. So before you start, know the impacts you want to have and how you're going to focus it, and treat it as a product. You're not serving everybody right off the bat. You're serving this group of people, and here's how you're going to help them, and here's the impact it's going to have. Here's how it's going to make their lives better. If you start your own dojo space, start with values and start with practices. The last thing you should ever worry about is tools, because tools are trivial, and tools are volatile, and tools are going to change. And so if teams think they want to learn about all the Jenkins stuff or all the AWS or all of these other kinds of things, help them understand the things they're trying to get out of it. What are the practices and what are the values that you have that you think these tools are going to help you with? Because if they don't have a good value system, then the tools aren't really proving a purpose. There's plenty of places, I'm sure you've all experienced it, like that have plenty of continuous integration going on, but nobody pays attention when the build's broke, right? And so that's just kind of silly. And so we have to stem it from, we need to have a foundation from learning, that learning is helping us with some values. It's helping us with some values and principles, and we're going to use practices that are going to help us along the way. And yeah, tools are going to be there, but it's not, the tools are going to change. And so we have to align around our practices and principles. So focus on those, and then the tools will follow as they may. The other thing to think about if you're going to go this route, dojos are, at least for me, they are drastically different than standard training. I'm not even a fan of the word training. There's a slide here at the end where it shows this book that myself and my partner wrote, and even in there we say you don't train people, you train dogs, right? People learn. You teach people. You grow with people. You don't train them. You create experiences where they can get better and improve. And so you can read a lot of these things in through here. The dojo is about teams over individuals. It's over context over single topics. It's over your real constraints over sandbox stuff where nothing ever goes wrong. I know I put the word transformational in here, and I think I had to do it for somebody else. But dojos, for me, the impact in the organization is it creates that evolution, because we can become this petri dish where we can create this double loop learning. You don't really get double loop learning with standard training. It usually just becomes how many people took the course. The last few things there, if you think about standard training, and again, take it as my own biased opinion, I'm totally fine with that. To me, standard training is high cost, low investment. The high cost, you're paying a lot of money for a lot of people to go someplace, but it's low investment because, they go out, they're gone for 2 days, but when they come back, we'll go back to work. The dojo is the inverse to me. It's a high investment. It means you're going to invest in space, you're going to invest in people, you're going to give them time. It's low cost because they're learning lots of things in context while they're building things. It's a different approach on learning. And then, of course, what we're trying to grow inside the dojo is different. All of the language even inside the dojo is different. We frame things up around not what are we going to build, but what are we going to learn next. If you think about on the Scrum side of things, we do stand-ups in the morning, but we never do the 3 questions. The standard 3 questions. In the dojo, we get together as a group for a stand-up in the morning, and we say, hey, what did we learn yesterday that was interesting? What was confusing about some stuff and we want to try and experiment around today? And what do you think? Is there anything that we learned yesterday that might change our route? And so it might sound like the 3 questions, but the language is different. It's always we instead of you or I. It's always learning as opposed to finish. It's always inquisitive by nature. So maybe I'm just being hippie-ish here, but it feels different for me, and people get pretty jazzed about it. So again, if you're trying to start one up and somebody's asking you to tell you the difference, here's some examples for you to kind of think through. Lastly, I've been in plenty of places where they say, we can't do a dojo yet, but prove to us it's a good idea. That's totally fine. Totally fine, especially in a remote space. Go to the teams. This is me walking a team through creating a value stream. What was interesting about this was the engineers in the room, wanted better requirements. And if you could imagine why they wanted better requirements, is because QA is taking too long. And they find out all of these things that they didn't know, so they got to give us better requirements early on. And it sounds silly, but look, it still happens. And so in this value stream map, we were just looking at kind of where are the problems happening, where's the volatility in the flow, and we were just whiteboarding things like, what if we tried this? What do you think would happen? What if we tried this? What do you think would happen? Until the team kind of said, yeah, we got 4 good ideas here. Let's try one of those ideas for a couple days and see if it works better. And so you can go to these teams and you can help them learn things. They need to own the learning, but you can do this in their space, especially if you can't get a physical space right off the bat. It's do what you need to do to make learning a thing and make it stick inside your organization. A couple other points here for you. Just the coaching for learning. I mentioned the stand-ups, those kinds of things. Teams still do demos inside the dojo. The demo is a little different, meaning we're trying to pull information from the audience. Instead of showing progress, we're trying to ask questions and saying, hey, we thought about this. How does this work? These are the things we've learned. We try to share learning and try to share experiences versus sharing progress. Again, if it seems like I'm mincing words, if you're doing those things that way already, then more power to you. I've just been in too many places where the demo was about progress and it wasn't about inquiry and learning. Retros we do retros all the time. We even do retros test-driven, and so they're every 2.5 days. But we want to pick 1 or 2 things that we want to try differently. But we'll ask the teams kind of like, how would you know this is helping? So think about the outcomes from the changes you want to make, the experiments you want to do. All the planning is different. Since we're planning in 2.5 days, since we're planning in 2.5 days, there is no estimation. It's just, can we get it done and is it interesting? We do continual planning, those kinds of things, because the reason we do continual planning is we're continuously learning. And so we do a lot of visualizations and talk about what's our next best investment in learning. And again, it's a different flow than most teams work through. So if you want to start your own dojo, again, align around a set of practices and learning goals that will have an organizational impact for you. Start off, tie the things you want to learn to an outcome. If you can't get a physical space, right now we can't, get a pilot team. Ideally, I have the normal workspaces, but Zoom kind of works, right? And the last one there is staffing your dojo with the best and brightest. That's a tough one. You need to have good coaches. Good coaches, your most intelligent engineers don't make your best technical coaches. I'm sure you all know this, but especially inside the dojo, you cannot have a coach that says, let me just do it, or let me show you how to do it. You need to have somebody that's patient enough that can see what's happening and create the learning moments. I think it was Daniel or somebody that mentioned some of the old XP stuff. Back last year in April, we were talking with Kent Beck about the dojos, and he even said, he goes, this is kind of how we used to do XP, and we used to do these things for 2 weeks. He goes, it's really cool that it's coming back around. Kent even said the big thing for coaching back when he started coaching in the early days of XP was creating those moments, seeing where somebody is about to go, not making sure it's safe so they're not going to hurt themselves, but make sure you create the moment for them to learn. And I think that's a really powerful thing, and that's what we're trying to do. And you need to have people that understand that difference between creating the moment and telling the answer. And it's not an easy thing for people to grasp. So, in summary, there, embrace learning. Make learning what you do. The dojo is a wonderful way, but however you go about doing it, make learning in small pieces, just the way your teams think and operate, and get it to your organization. Continuously experiment, continuously learn, continuously evolve what you're doing. If you were doing a dojo, hypothetically today, and 5 years from now it looked exactly the same, you're kind of not doing it, right? Like the learning evolves, the product evolves. We need to continuously evolve the way we do things. More Deming for you. Look, your organizations have great people. The worst we can do is waste their abilities right now. I think, put another way, Deming said, everybody says we hire the best, but then you have to cut the dead wood, right? You shouldn't be hiring either the wood was alive and you killed it, or you're hiring poorly. Your organizations are full of wonderful, brilliant people. Let them be brilliant people. Let them unlock their potential, and you do this through making learning the way they go about doing their work.